Hi, and welcome back to the
Surrealist Experience.
I am Makenna Austin, and today I'm here with...
Hello, I'm Jolie Wells.
And we're going to be talking about Spirits Over Lake George by Sandra L. Jabaut, and it's inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe and her many various skull paintings.
Yeah, I feel like we can't talk about Sandra's piece without discussing a little bit of O'Keeffe's work.
Yeah, definitely.
O'Keeffe has definitely done a lot of skull paintings as well. Like, she's mostly infamous for her skulls and flower paintings. And in this piece that we're looking at right now, the Spirits Over Lake George, it does have both of those elements, but they're arranged very differently.
The flower to me represents this in-between of life and death because it's not a traditional fully formed flower with multiple petals on it in the ground, but it's also not completely in the sky, and it has this airy, like, whimsical feeling to it because it's floating and it has pieces kind of detached, but it's still intertwined, and it reminds me of that process of, like, the cycle of life and how it's coming from the ground and going up to the skull and then going back down and kind of being attached, not fully yet, but sort of detached. And I think you could look at the cycles going one way or the other. It just all really wraps into one another very well.
To me, it's like a flower, but it also kind of looks like a firework, especially since it's over Lake George, which, if you don't know Lake George, it's like every holiday there's fireworks.
Yes.
That's like the whole shebang.
Also, what you pointed out, the firework, it really stands out to me now because thinking about what us locals or even tourists see Lake George as is this spot for entertainment, but initially it was a home to animals, and it was only their home, and we came in and incorporated like our American lifestyle and other traditions we have, and I think she's incorporating that, but also making us think about what was Lake George originally for. Like, I think it's giving light to those animals that can't speak for themselves.
I really like that interpretation. I haven't really thought of that piece in this way. I kind of went for more of like a depiction of the lake itself is very dark and gloomy, but there's still like a little bit of hope with that flower, and it's like the skulls are leading your eyes to it. These skulls are in the center, but they're almost organized in a way where it almost creates like a slope that leads down to the flower. And if you look at the cloud formations in the background as well, there's this huge dark like spot that almost as well leads your eye to, like, I guess it's like the main focal point of a piece.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention that Georgia O'Keeffe saw Lake George herself, actually, and drew inspiration for her many natural-looking scenic paintings from the areas that she resided in, like Lake George and New Mexico. And what's interesting is I used to work at an art gallery called the Dove Block Project in Geneva, New York, and Georgia O'Keeffe was in a nearby town in Canandaigua, New York, and became friends with Arthur Dove, the man who the art gallery is named after. He lived there actually in an apartment on the 4th floor. And Georgia O'Keeffe drew inspiration from Arthur Dove, but that isn't as well known. And I just think that's a really interesting fact. Like, if you look at both of their works, they incorporate the nature that they are around in the Finger Lakes, and she incorporates that as well as Lake George.
That is really cool. Small world, small world.
Right?
Yeah. So it's almost like you have like a little bit of a personal connection to this piece. I love that.
Yeah. I like how the artist Sandra has 3 deers here instead of just one, like Georgia O'Keeffe would frequently show just one, but the 3 reminds me that this deer has a family, so it just adds more of that, like, mournfulness to the painting of mourning these creatures and understanding that they weren't just like one being alone. They had others besides them too. They were a part of their own community, much like we're a part of this community.
During the time period that this painting was created, it was created like during COVID.
Yeah.
And so I interpret it as like it's the death of what we used to know Lake George as. Another thing with this piece is that it feels very dark and gloomy with its uses of like these cool toned grays, and the only like warmth that it has in this entire painting is the skulls, which is very interesting. Before we go, I'm gonna ask you specifically what like emotions invoke you when you look at this piece. Like first view, first look, what's the first, like, how do you feel?
Despair, because there are these like empty, hollow places inside of their skulls, and obviously they're missing a lot of like what makes them look lively, so it just makes me feel like something's missing, and I kind of like mourn that.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, when I look at it, there's almost like this implied motion in the background with the clouds moving, and at first I do get that despair, but the more I look at it, the more I feel like it represents hope in a way.
Right.
Like I'm almost waiting for a lightning strike to happen from the clouds behind to bring like light into it.
Yeah.
It seems like it's dead, but there's life like beaming throughout it.
Right. So this was Spirits Over Lake George by Sandra L. Jabaut, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.